Hello and welcome to this second session on the myths of field force planning. In this session we're going to be looking at the myth that achieving balanced efficient territories is easy for a sales manager to do. In the original webinar that we ran as part of this session, we took a poll as about how people planned their sales territories the last time they did a reorganisation. And despite the huge investment that people were making in their sales force, there was relatively little sophistication and science applied in terms of how they reorganised their sales territories. So some people used laminated maps on walls, some people were using spreadsheets, some mapping software that had no sophisticated way of taking into account travel times, and some were doing work within CRM systems that really wasn't appropriate. So given this huge investment in sales forces, shouldn't there be more of an investment in terms of the technology to achieve higher call rates, lower travel times, and just a better return on investment? I suppose the starting point for this is to look at what we mean by a balanced territory structure. And what we're really meaning is just a way of trying to stick geography together, mainly postcodes, in such a way that we achieve sensible, efficient territories. Now people, as we said, do this in a number of methods. The trouble is when they think about what is a balanced territory, they generally, given the tools they have available, can only do things such as give a territory the same number of calls or visits, or in this example the same amount of time in call. Now the reality is that it isn't just about calling in terms of a salesperson's day. There's a heck of a lot of driving involved as well. And what we often find is we get presented with a solution like this which looks good in terms of being balanced, but as soon as you add the travelling on top, what you end up with is a hugely imbalanced territory structure. And this is only natural given that road networks and clusters of calls differ and vary hugely around the country. So in this example, what we see is what appeared as balance is we have some territories which are now sort of peaking out to the right, and in these examples we're trying to squeeze 6 days work into 5 days. So what we're really trying to do here is either get around too many calls in too little time, which means that either calls will be dropped, they won't last as long as they should do and be as high quality as they can be, or maybe people will be working longer than they actually want to, and we end up with people being dissatisfied and maybe wanting to leave the business. Those that are peaking out to the left, we are in essence paying them 5 days salary, but they're only able to contribute 4 days of workload because they don't have enough calls on their patch. So both of these situations are undesirable. So really the challenge is there a way that we can easily stick together postcodes in such a way that we achieve balance and minimise travelling time? Here we have a very simplistic scenario where we just have 10 postcodes and we're trying to allocate them to 2 people. Even in this scenario, there are many different combinations of how to allocate these territories. And bear in mind that most countries have thousands of postcodes within them, and obviously more than 2 territories. The job becomes a huge one to do manually. And then there's an added layer of complexity in that how do we take into account the road network to be efficient? For example, if we look at Manchester, if you had a map on the wall or a map on a piece of software that you were trying to allocate postcodes with, you would probably be able to look at a road network of this kind of level of detail. This is the motorways and the main trunk roads around Manchester. However, the salespeople around here are almost certain to be using roads which don't appear on this map, maybe right down to street level. So if we create an allocation based on these roads, we're not creating something which will match reality, and we're bound to create an inefficient result. So as we add additional data and detail the road network, we can now see, even just focusing on one town here, that there is far too much information on that map for the human brain to make sense of. So in terms of the impact this has, it's kind of borne out by some research carried out by Zoltners and Lorimer that only 38% of consumer product goods companies have workload imbalances less than plus or minus 15%. So the vast majority of companies seem happy to accept having some territories where they're trying to squeeze 6 days work into 5, and others where they're paying for 5 days but only getting the impact of 4. Not surprisingly, this has a significant impact in revenues, and Zoltners and Lorimer believe this can be up to 7% in lost sales. That is a huge figure, which again makes the lack of investment in sophisticated software even more difficult to believe. And as you say, software like CACI is out there where all you need to do is click on a button, and a few minutes later you end up with an optimized territory structure, such as the one like this for Norway. And the results are fantastic too, as well. 25% less driving, which really means we can achieve the same number of calls with 10% fewer people, or we can achieve 10% more calls with the people that we've got. They will have truly balanced workloads, so even taking into account travel times from one territory to another, they'll be working the same number of hours each day. If we lose someone, rather than just recruiting someone from where we've lost someone, why don't we look to see if there's a better place? Over time, given where we've won customers and lost customers, given where we've recruited people, it may be that there's a significantly different location to recruit that will give us a big uplift in terms of efficiency. As we've seen, rather than manually poring over maps and trying to allocate thousands of postcodes, why don't we get an optimizer to do it all for us in a matter of minutes? And because of that speed, we can look at a number of different scenarios that we may be thinking about implementing, rather than trying to struggle manually to get one done. So in terms of this reality, it's not just that achieving balanced, efficient territories is easy for a sales manager to do, but that is only the case if they have access to the right tools. Thank you for listening.